In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro introduced his proposal for the constitutional reform project before the National Assembly. In Panama, the public prosecutor's office will press charges against union members arrested during protests denouncing the privatization of the Social Security Fund. And in Palestine, authorities registered over 250,000 homes destroyed in the Gaza Strip by the Israeli aggression. Hello, welcome from the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro presented his proposal for the constitutional reform project before the National Assembly to continue moving forward in accordance with the current needs of the Venezuelan people. In the framework of a solemn session of the legislature, the head of state delivered the first project for the reform of the Constitution. The proposal covers 4 main topics which seek to broaden the constitutional framework and consists of 80 articles. The project proposes to grant the popular power direct attributions in the structure of national power. In addition, it is proposed that the fundamental text be adjusted to the construction of new modernity, emphasizing the incorporation of the country to a multipolar world and the strengthening of the productive economic sphere with its own initiative.
It would be in the first place the expansion and improvement of the participatory democracy and direct democracy.
Un Estado democrático, una sociedad democrática, ampliar las bases, los mecanismos, las instituciones y la forma.
A democratic state, a democratic society, expanding the bases, mechanisms, institutions, and forms of freedom and Republican democracy of this century. You know the effort to build a new democratic system and incorporate as we are incorporating. In one of those articles, the concept of the distribution of the classic power, we could say of Montesquieu, national power, Venezuelan power, is attributed in 3 levels.
En 3 niveles: el poder nacional, el poder regional, el poder municipal, y aspiro.
National power, regional power, municipal power, and I hope, with the favor of God, with this reform, that we expressly, tacitly, and widely include communal power, territorial power, the power of the base, popular power. There would be, for instances of power where the fundamental basis would be social, communal, and popular power.
In this sense, the Venezuelan head of state emphasized that the first point of the constitutional reform implies a fundamental element regarding the democratization of the government systems in the country.
I ask for wisdom so that these concepts improve, from the fundamental concepts, from the fundamental principles to the mechanisms and forms of application. Surely many things will remain for the development of the laws, as always, organic laws, special laws, but it is a fundamental element to democratize the Federal Council of Government and expand it, improve it, perfect it.
Desarrollo de las leyes, como siempre, leyes orgánicas, leyes especiales, pero es un elemento fundamental. Democratizar los sistemas de gobierno. Democratizar el Consejo Federal de Gobierno, de ampliarlo, mejorarlo.
Democratize and transform from the root the structures of the old governorships, of the old mayoralties, of the old municipal councils, of the old legislative councils. Turn them upside out like a sock and establish them on new parameters of operation.
President Nicolás Maduro also explained the second point of the framework of the country's constitution, highlighting that it is based on the construction of a new modernity, defining the values and principles to a more humane society.
Segundo punto, el tema de la construcción de una nueva sociedad.
The second point is the issue of the construction of a new society and its component elements.
Las nuevas tecnologías, el desarrollo de las nuevas formas de comunicación.
How much we are going to enjoy this debate on new technologies, on the development of new forms of communication, and we have at least 10 articles on all the issues of the protection of the right to collective health, to the health of our children, talking about mental health, to the psychological stability of society, the whole form of defense with which we are going to vaccinate society from the new forms of aggression through technology, and much more.
In other news, in Panama, the Public Prosecutor's Office announced they will be pressing 6 charges against 83 members of the Construction and Similar Industries Union who were arrested for protesting the privatization of the security fund. Prosecutor Elizabeth Carrion wants to press charges, arguing they committed alleged crimes against public servants, state patrimony, order, freedom, and against the life and personal integrity. The defense attorney representing the workers denounced that such an indictment will be a legal outburst for the said workers have been unjustly accused by a system that seeks to criminalize social protest. Meanwhile, activists warn that such an indictment will be an attack against democracy and human rights. And the Honduran government announced the arrival of 5 planes that will transport citizens deported by the United States over the coming week. In this regard, the National Migration Institute announced the schedule of confirmed flights and also stated that it is taking steps to add an Army aircraft in order to repatriate nationals detained at the border. Meanwhile, the Foreign Ministry denied the increase in the deportations of undocumented migrants from the United States and assured the flow of returns remains within normal parameters. Now going to take our first short break. Remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English. We'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The Dominican Republic has lost about 0.9% of its gross domestic product due to climate change. The Dominican Central Bank has warned that rising temperatures are affecting the lives of the people and pose a significant risk to stability and economic growth in the areas like tourism and agriculture. The Dominican Central Bank says the country's economy needs a comprehensive transformation to counter the effects extreme weather phenomena brought about by climate change. In Argentina's President Javier Milei might face impeachment after promoting the Libra cryptocurrency, which has been linked to potential fraud. The controversy erupted on Friday when Milei posted about the cryptocurrency on his X account, causing its value to soar before crashing hours later. The opposition has expressed outrage, accusing the president of artificially inflating the asset's value and profiting at the expense of thousands of investors. Several political groups have demanded explanations and announced plans to file a formal impeachment motion in Congress. Lawmakers are preparing to investigate whether Milei committed fraud or misconduct, with key agencies such as the National Securities Commission and the Anti-Corruption Office expected to play a critical role in the case. And we continue in Argentina as more evidence linking President Javier Milei to the cryptocurrency scam comes to light. The project creator claims he is an advisor to the president. Hayden Davis, the creator of the so-called meme coin, confirmed this in a video that he shared in several platforms. Davis claims that he was guaranteed public support in the coin's launching. That was what the Argentine head of state did last Friday when he became the ringleader in the promotion of a millionaire scam. The government has wanted to distance itself from this serious fact, but Davis directly implicates the executive, and he also affirms that he will not return the money. Also in Argentina, Buenos Aires Health Minister Nicolas Kreplak alerted the country to a health crisis that has been little addressed: the increase in suicides over the last year. Kreplak pointed out that the number of suicides in the capital doubles the number of murders. The figures increased during the first year in office of President Javier Milei. Alberto Trimboli, honorary president of the Argentine Mental Health Association, explained that although the country has a national law on suicide prevention, it is unknown how it is currently being handled. Trimboli warns on the importance of implementing awareness and prevention programs from the ministry. And the Russian Defense Ministry reported that Ukraine lost over 1,000 soldiers during military operations carried out in the last 24 hours. The Central Group registered about 475 Ukrainian casualties, the Southern Group 180, while the Western Group registered more than 165 enemy losses. Likewise, the Russian defense detailed that several war vehicles, such as a tank, 5 armored combat vehicles, and 13 pieces of artillery, all manufactured in the West, were destroyed. For their part, Russian anti-aircraft forces shot down 50 drones and 2 U.S. multiple rocket launcher projectiles. At the beginning of World War II, the territory of Western Ukraine, which was part of Poland until 1939, was inhabited by a mixed Polish and Ukrainian population. After the incorporation of these lands into the Soviet Union in 1939 and the beginning of the German occupation in 1949, tension between the Poles and Ukrainians began to rise.
La masacre de Lanivtsi tuvo lugar el 13 de febrero de
The Lanivtsi massacre took place on February 13, 1944, and was one of the most tragic cases of the notorious Volhynia massacre on the territory of today's Western Ukraine. There, between 1943 and 1944, the ultranationalist Ukrainian insurgent army raged against the ethnic Polish population.
Ucraniano, UPA, se ensañó contra la población de etnia polaca.
Poles have been living here for a long time. By the way, the nationalists call them weed. For example, at that time, they had a wheat field with ears of wheat forming, which meant the Ukrainian state, the Ukrainian people. So the weed that were scattered there had to be pulled up and destroyed.
In revenge for the way the Poles ruled them in the period between the two wars, the Ukrainians launched a campaign of terror against the Poles. Poles to this day remember with horror how bloody this Ukrainian terror was.
This genocide was part of ethnic cleansing to create a mono-ethnic Ukrainian state based on the ideas of racial superiority. Although today's Ukrainian propagandists try to defend, cover up, and justify Stepan Bandera and his followers, the truth is that they murdered more than 100,000 Poles.
When someone kills, destroys, burns other people alive, you can't call them a human being again, because people don't do that. That's not human. And whatever the event, war or something like that, a person should not stoop to such horror.
Many descendants of the massacred people live in Poland, and they remember it very well. That is why it will not be possible to forget and change the memories of these people, to synchronize them with the mainstream of the current Polish foreign policy towards Ukraine.
This event is an unfinished page of history. Despite the efforts of the Ukrainian and Polish leadership to ignore it in order to consolidate their alliance against Russia, ordinary people do remember it, and the witnesses of this nightmare are still alive.
Underneath the hut, they dug a huge hole where they threw the people. They weren't even people anymore, but pieces of them. Pieces, pieces, pieces. Heads, hands, just pieces of people.
When they killed my mother, she fell on me, and I, along with her. I remember how we crawled out from under her. There was so much blood.
There are two types of partnerships, one in favor of something, one against something. Poland opted for an alliance with Ukraine against Russia. As long as Ukraine defines itself as an enemy of Russia, Poland will love and support them.
In a single day in Lanivtsi, Ukrainian nationalists stabbed and killed 72 people with axes, pitchforks, and bayonets. In Volhynia, there were hundreds of similar cases. However, the current regime in Kyiv not only glorifies, but also claims to be the continuator of these Nazi groups.
We have our second short break coming up before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, where you'll be able to watch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back. In Syria, a drone strike killed at least 2 people in Idlib province, northeast of Damascus. Civil defense detailed that the attack was directed against a vehicle traveling on the road between Aleppo and Latakia. The body of both victims were recovered after the fire was extinguished. So far, no one has claimed responsibility for the attack. However, authorities presume that it is the international coalition led by the United States, which operates in Syria under the pretext of fighting terrorism. And over 250,000 homes have been destroyed in Gaza Strip by the Israeli aggression. The Gaza Ministry of Public Works and Housing estimated at least 170,000 homes have been reduced to rubble, whereas 80,000 have been rendered uninhabitable. Palestinian authorities have denounced the accumulation of over 42 million tons of contaminated rubble resulting from Israeli shelling. Meanwhile, international organizations say the reconstruction of Gaza will likely take up to 15 years and cost some $53 billion. In Chile, people took to the streets with banners in solidarity with the Palestinian people and in rejection of the Israeli aggressions in the occupied territories. Thousands of citizens gathered Saturday to denounce the continuity of the Israeli aggression in Gaza and the West Bank despite the ongoing truce. They also condemned plans by the United States and Israel to attempt to ethnically cleanse Gaza by driving its inhabitants to move to other Arab nations in the area. Moreover, the Chilean government spokesman urged other countries in the region to declare themselves in a state of alert until a definitive ceasefire is approved. Also in Lebanon, thousands of people took to the streets to protest against a blockade to Iranian airplanes. Demonstrators demanded the Lebanese government allow Iranian airplanes to land at Beirut's airport and that it takes measures to prevent Israeli hegemony in the country. On its part, the Hezbollah Lebanese resistance movement denounced police repression against demonstrators, calling that the government held an emergency meeting to discuss the crisis in the country and measures to avoid the situation from deteriorating any further. In Ethiopia, the 38th African Union Summit held its closing session. Debates focused on peace, national security, and climate change. On Sunday, African leaders met for the second consecutive day to discuss the implementation of a continental free trade agreement and to present a report on how to ensure regional security. On this last session, the leaders discussed conflicts in the continent and the situation in Palestine. They also set date for the next meeting and passed a final resolution signed by member countries. Meanwhile, in Mali, at least 42 people died and others were injured following the collapse of a gold mine. The accident occurred in the district of Kenieba, east of the country. Authorities warned that the death toll could increase as search and rescue efforts continue. This is the second landslide accident to occur in Mali in the last few weeks. And in China, authorities announced the creation of the first floating oil production, storage, and offloading vessel with the capacity to capture carbon. The vessel is 333 meters long and 60 meters wide. It has an extracting capacity of 120,000 barrels of crude oil, and it has a system installed that traps the carbon dioxide generated during navigation and production operations. Plus, it can use the residual heat to generate electricity, thus contributing with the environment and helping save energy. Officials say adding carbon capture and storage systems reduces emissions and contributes to global carbon neutrality goals. On Sunday, Venezuela's capital Caracas hosted the CAF 2025 Marathon with the participation of at least 6,000 people. Since early in the morning, the streets of Caracas welcomed thousands of runners from various regions of the country to experience the marathon. The race was held in two modalities, 42 and 21 kilometers, and had more than 25 hydration and cheering points along the route. This event is considered the most important race in Venezuela, with the participation of some of the most prominent figures in Venezuelan sports. Like this, we have reached the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find this and many other news on our website at telesurenglish.net. So join us on our social medias on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thanks for watching.